Hello, and welcome to episode 409 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Evan Silva. We have no time to dilly-dally. You have drafts coming up. All our rankings, all our content is live in the draft kit. It is time, my friends. Evan, how's it going?
Very well. Speaking of drafts, if anybody's going to be in the Chicagoland area, Wednesday, August 24th, we're going to have a bunch of live drafts at this bar/restaurant called Kettle Strings in Oak Park, Illinois, right outside the city. Last year it rained. We were still able to have like 60, 65, 70 people in there. We had 4 live drafts going. I just bought like a ton of draft boards, and they come with like stickers and like a ring. If you win, you get a ring, and there's like a last place thing for the person that comes in last. And hopefully we're going to be able to do 6 drafts this year. Last year we did 4 14-team leaguers, we do like a bunch of flexes, no defense, no kickers. It's an absolute blast just for the environment and the atmosphere. And, everybody absolutely loves it. And it's good also for the small business, to support the small business, because we're going to do it on a weekday night, where they might not have as much traffic, and we're going to give them some traffic. So just a lot of good vibes. And we invite anybody to come out. Again, Oak Park, Illinois, August 24th, Wednesday, Kettle Strings.
I love this because sometimes I get lost, and like I'm at fault for sure. I get lost, and like I'm trying to win so hard that I forget that like fantasy football is supposed to be fun and a fun game with your friends and hanging out. And like I've lost that somewhere along the way, I think, just from like trying to grind and win money and be like so savage against my enemies. But I love stuff like this where people just get together and draft and have fun, so it's great.
And I guarantee you, everyone that went last year is going to come back, because everyone had a blast. This year, we're probably anticipating more like 100, but and we're getting the word out earlier too. Last year was like 5 days before. Mm-hmm. We're starting to talk about it already. But yeah, anybody that's in the Chicagoland area, please come out. I promise you'll have a good time.
All right. On today's show, we are going to go over the news of the last 7 days, what actually matters, and how it's affected our rankings. Also, be sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, as Evan, myself, and Leone will be doing a $2,000 buy-in live draft stream on Wednesday night, the 17th. Again, be sure you subscribe to our YouTube. 2K buy-in. Myself, Evan, and Leone will be battling it out over who to pick in a 2K on Wednesday, the 17th. Before we get into it today, note this podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. They do have this absurd $2 million to first, $1 million to second place fantasy tournament on a $25 buy-in running right now. If you use promo code ETR when you sign up, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Great practice for your home league. Really is. So visit Underdog Fantasy and use promo code ETR for up to $100 in free entries. All right, Evan, let's get to the news here. I know you've been monitoring this Matthew Stafford elbow situation. It's been described as tendonitis. People have said it's not really a football injury. It's more of a baseball injury. It certainly doesn't make anyone feel good who's been taking Cooper Kupp, number 2, number 3, number 4 overall, whatever it is. What's your current feel on the Matthew Stafford situation? And I should note that Matthew Stafford did throw on Saturday and reportedly looked good.
Yeah, and I went on Dr. Chow, his show yesterday, and I asked him about it, and he's pretty optimistic about it, that it's certainly not going to be a pain issue, because no quarterbacks over the last several decades have played through as much pain as has Matthew Stafford, who's been constantly dealing with back problems and all kinds of stuff. There's not a tougher quarterback in the NFL. I remember when he first came in, I think he missed like most of his rookie year with an injury, and one of his teammates called him a China doll. Yeah, like he was made of porcelain. And ever since then, like Matthew Stafford has like never missed a game. I mean, very, very rarely does he ever miss time, and he's going to play through any pain tolerance issues. But it sounds like it's tendonitis, and if they were actually worried about him, like potentially missing early season time, they wouldn't be letting him throw at all. So I like what I heard there yesterday. And, again, if it comes down to a pain tolerance thing, he's going to be fine. I did consider, because, we've talked about this top tier of, Jonathan Taylor, Christian McCaffrey, Justin Jefferson, and Cooper Kupp. And I thought about moving Cooper Kupp to the bottom of that first tier, so he'd become the number 4 overall player. I believe right now he's number 2. I may still do that, but that would be the extent of it. And that would just constitute moving Justin Jefferson into the overall wide receiver 1 spot. And, it's big, it's big in theory, but it's actually not that big because I think that they're really close anyways.
Exactly. And yeah, I would not fault anyone for taking Justin Jefferson ahead of Cooper Kupp, but I would not move Cooper Kupp out past number 4 in my rankings whatsoever. If you want more of my take on this situation, you listen to Market Monday. I just think that Matthew Stafford, to me, is an easy pass in fantasy because he doesn't have like separation ability anyways. He doesn't run. They're not going to be a high volume throwing offense anyways, and so you don't need the risk there. But Cooper Kupp, obviously, I'm still taking him in the top 4. We got updates on the Ravens running back situation. This one, we've been really high on taking J.K. Dobbins in round 5, 6, 7, where he's been going throughout much of this offseason. I've described it as, the coach is just trying to underpromise and overdeliver with J.K. Dobbins. And it seems like that's how it's going to be. J.K. Dobbins was activated off PUP. Adam Schefter tweeted that the Ravens do expect J.K. Dobbins to be ready for week 1. However, Gus Edwards maybe not ready for week 1. Now, the problem here, Evan, is that this is going to skyrocket J.K. Dobbins' ADP. Like, I could see it going up 2 full rounds. And I start to get worried there, no longer in round 5 or 6, but in round 3 or 4, because you have a guy coming off such a serious knee injury who's not going to catch a lot of passes, who may share some work if Gus Edwards gets back. And so I'm kind of passing on J.K. Dobbins in round 3 and 4 if he gets there, but I'm so happy that I have some J.K. Dobbins at 5 and 6. What do you think about the Ravens backfield on the latest reports?
Yeah, and they've still got a lot of guys there. They drafted Tyler Beatty and they signed Mike Davis, which that should have been a little bit of a tell. They weren't fully confident in where their top 2 RBs were going to be at this stage of the offseason. I don't know, I'm not an expert when it comes to breaking down video, injury video stuff, but I didn't think that J.K. Dobbins looked particularly explosive in his first practice back. He is going to avoid reserve PUP, which is a good thing. But I'm still pretty cautious on him. I'm right there with you, and he was actually, you say you've been taking him in rounds 5, 6, 7. Like, I've seen him go at the 7, 8 fringe.
It's correct. That's a smash. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I would certainly continue to take him if he lasts there, but I'm with you. I think his ADP could soar, and I would not be willing to take him in the 5th round.
Yeah. Same page there. The Twitter freaked out over Josh Jacobs playing in the Hall of Fame game on Thursday, and we did not project that. Obviously, we're projecting every player for every preseason game. Shout out to us. You can check out our preseason package. We had Josh Jacobs for 0 snaps in that game, so we were surprised as well. I just don't think it's something like totally freak out about, because this is kind of what we expected. I expected the Raiders to go full-blown committee under Josh McDaniels. I didn't really want any Josh Jacobs anyways. What do you think about Josh Jacobs playing in the Hall of Fame game?
I wasn't that surprised by it. I mean, if you look at through the lens of, Derek Carr didn't play, Devontae Adams didn't play, then it's like, well, why is this dude out here playing? But I also
the starting offensive line played.
The starting offensive line did play. And by the way, you got to check out Brandon Thorne's our interview with Brandon Thorne. Their offensive line is going to be really bad this year.
Yeah,
it's a big problem. Zamir White is the guy that I've been interested in the backfield, and it was good to see him play because I know he missed some time to start camp. So it was really good to see him out there. I thought he looked really good. I mean, I think that there's a chance he might be the best back on the team. I know Josh Jacobs is still fairly highly regarded through his draft capital, but his on-field production really has been a little bit above replacement level. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if they traded him. I'm not predicting a trade, but they're certainly not committed to him. I mean, they declined his 5th-year option. They drafted 2 RBs. They signed a couple more. This is a new regime, and they're not going to have any commitment to Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, and Josh Jacobs, I hope that people take him in the 60s. I feel like this Hall of Fame talk is going to drop him into the 70s, but I just don't take Josh Jacobs, period. Just passing. Then I saw you tweeted about the Matt Rhule comments on Christian McCaffrey, and Matt Rhule, I think, number one, gets it that he plays running back. You can't play scared.
Well, this is the only thing that Matt Rhule gets.
He doesn't want to get fired.
Well, that too.
But yeah, I mean, Matt Rhule gets it that he plays running back. You can't play scared. You got to give him his touches. So I don't think they're going to scale him back at all because he's been hurt the last 2 years. So I know we've talked about this endlessly. I actually can't even face tweeting about it anymore because every reply is just dumber than the previous one about Christian McCaffrey getting hurt. But yeah, it's good to know that Matt Rhule at least sees it the way that we do. Any more comments on what Matt Rhule said about CMC?
No, that's all we need to know.
All right. The Treylon Burks stuff. Speaking of people on Twitter. Okay. So
Yeah.
this is and because we've talked a lot about this on ETR too. Leone has this battle with Evan going over Treylon Burks' outlook. And I'm like somewhere in the middle. I have no idea if Treylon Burks is good. People saying Treylon Burks is going to be the next AJ Brown. That's asking a ton. I have no idea. I do think that the idea that because Treylon Burks had a tough OTA or whatever, he was a little bit out of shape and he's going to be behind Nick Westbrook-Akini. To me, that's preposterous. Like they need him right away, very early in the year to play almost every snap. And maybe he'll turn into Laviska Shenault and that's his game and he'll suck. But they need to find out like right away. So my take is I don't really know how good Treylon Burks is going to be, but they're going to give him the chance. What do you make of all these reports circulating about Treylon now?
Well, I think that the one thing that continues to stay in the back of my mind, even after I moved up Treylon Burks, I capitulated and I apologized to Leone, is still the evaluations of Matt Harmon and Mike Renner, who are really good at this, as to Treylon Burks' game, because he did not run pro style routes in college. He actually showed up to the combine. He was less athletic than anyone really anticipated. You talk about Laviska Shenault. Laviska Shenault is a really good athlete. Treylon Burks really isn't, at least as per his combine measurables. So you have a manufactured touch player coming into the league with league average at best athleticism for his position. He gets off to a slow start. There are warning signs here. This is not a Jamar Chase situation. We could all absolutely agree that Jamar Chase was a freaking insane baller. He was the number 5 overall pick in the draft.
One of the best prospects we've seen since like Julio.
Yeah. I mean, he won the freaking Biletnikoff over Justin Jefferson in college. I mean, so to me, it's not that kind of a situation. The question really is about Treylon Burks' game. Nick Westbrook-Akini knows the offense. He can block. This is a run-first offense. This Kyle Phillips kid has been showing up. Robert Woods is one of the most reliable receivers in the league. Austin Hooper is going to have a role. It's just, are we sure that Treylon Burks is going to have this massive target share? And I get it. Look, you may not want to overthink it because he's a first-round pick with a ton of opportunity inside this offense. And so that's why I capitulated and apologized to Leone, and I moved Treylon Burks up. But I still feel, I'm going to have these moments of discomfort.
Yeah.
Anytime that, there's a negative report about Treylon Burks. And this one wasn't, there wasn't a whole lot of substance to this one, but it's just, it worries me. It worries me.
Yeah. He's not exclusively playing with the first team. He's getting some reps with Tannehill, some with Woodside, some with Malik Willis, and that's what the report was. But I think a lot of their guys are rotating through like that. And to me, it's not a Jamar Chase situation. I want to be very clear. Like I sent a tweet about the Jamar Chase thing. The only point that I was trying to make is that a lot of this camp stuff, you have to be careful. You have to be very careful with Treylon Burks is running with the third team or Jamar Chase can't catch the football anymore. Like you got to be really, really careful with that stuff. And so we obviously are not moving on that stuff. I think Evan's points are well taken and it's baked into his ADP. You can get Treylon Burks in like the 8th or 9th round sometimes. And, there's a lot of upside on that. He could just be bad though. I mean, like Evan said, he could just be not good enough. And that's possible too. And so
he's just like a red flag prospect. I remember this. It reminds me a lot of N'Keal Harry a few years ago, who won in very similar fashion to how Treylon Burks did. I remember watching N'Keal Harry and being like, I just don't get it. He had a ton of production in college. He was young. So he looks really good on the fucking spreadsheet. Okay. Mm-hmm. And Treylon Burks is similar. He's similar and he's got a ton of opportunities. So did N'Keal Harry. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. But, the capitulation has happened.
Okay. I guess somewhat interesting news out of Cleveland. Kareem Hunt requests a trade. He held himself out of team drills. Mm-hmm. Then the very next day, he's back in team drills. And they told him no. They were like, Kareem, you're not getting traded. Go back to work. And he goes back to work immediately. Do you think it's still possible that they're working on something behind the scenes? And what do you make of the Cleveland backfield after this Kareem Hunt trade request?
Well, we've been talking about this. They gave a second-round tender to Dearness Johnson. They drafted Jerome Ford. It's like, what are they doing here? And we've suspected that Kareem Hunt might get cut even. Mm-hmm. And then he requests a trade. I don't know, man. I don't really have any strong takeaways right here. I'm just kind of monitoring the situation. I do think that Kareem Hunt at some point could still be on the move. I also think he's a really good back. I think he's a really good player. You know, he's certainly the Browns' most versatile back, and they're trying to win.
Mhm.
So I don't know what to think. I'm just trying to, just keeping monitoring the situation.
Yeah, I'll say a couple things. First, if Deshaun Watson ends up suspended for the entire year, like they're not going to be trying to win because they have like no chance to win with Jacoby Brissett. So
Mm.
that could maybe spark some kind of trade. Second of all, Dearness Johnson is good, I think. Not as good as Kareem Hunt, but Dearness Johnson can
Mhm.
certainly play. I'm not sure they have enough room to like keep all these guys. Kareem Hunt has a very unique contract where they have to pay him on a per game basis. So yeah, there's a lot going on here for sure. I think there's a little bit of hidden upside in all the guys, just in case something happens to Kareem Hunt. In other words, if Kareem Hunt was to be cut or traded, it would help Dearness Johnson, it would help Nick Chubb, and it would help Kareem Hunt too, most likely. So yeah, I think there's like some hidden upside in all the guys if you think
Yeah.
something happens.
Yeah. If Kareem Hunt went back to Kansas City, I mean
Right.
that could be fun.
There's been a lot of positive reports. Maybe the only positive reports out of Chicago have been about Khalil Herbert. Allegedly, Khalil Herbert is awesome at camp. And I think a lot of people
Mhm.
think Khalil Herbert is very good
He is.
anyways. Meanwhile, Dave Montgomery is like getting some reps on special teams, which I thought was kind of overblown, but whatever. He's still
Mm.
getting some reps on special teams. I don't really take David Montgomery like ever. Like I just don't want any part of David Montgomery, not necessarily because of Khalil Herbert, but at least in part because I think they could reduce David Montgomery's workload a little bit this year. What do you think about the Bears backfield?
Yeah, I mean, you have to think about these teams too when they have new regimes coming in, and the Bears essentially cleaned house. They've got a whole new front office and a whole new coaching staff. David Montgomery's contract is coming up. The Bears, if they're smart at all, and they're not, but if they have any shred of intelligence from a decision making standpoint, they're not going to give a big contract to David Montgomery, right? So, and some of the beat writers have come out and said straight up, like this is going to be more of a committee that it has been in recent seasons. And I don't think Justin Fields is going to be a big check down quarterback. So I think that the target volume projection for David Montgomery is not going to be particularly strong. Now all of a sudden he's going to like start losing carries to Khalil Herbert potentially, which he should. Khalil Herbert is like legit good. The offensive line is absolute garbage. And how many points are they going to score as a team? Like all of a sudden, David Montgomery is like heading into that Josh Jacobs territory.
Mm-hmm. They could be one of the worst teams in the league. I mean, there's no
Oh
doubt
yeah,
about it.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And Roquan Smith just requested a trade. I mean, they're an
Yeah.
absolute disaster.
Yeah.
They're a disaster.
Um, there's more Kenny Gainwell hype. I know we've talked about this a ton with the Miles Sanders stuff. Kenny Gainwell, reports or speculation from beat writers, he's been used in higher leverage situations, i.e., red zone, i.e., passing downs. I don't think there's anything new. Like to me, we know Kenny Gainwell is going to play a lot. We know Boston Scott's going to play some, but I've seen Miles Sanders go in like the hundreds at times. And I talked about this on Market Monday. Like when Miles Sanders goes in the hundreds, I'm taking him there, but I
Yeah,
still like being high on Kenny Gainwell, just a
me
dude
too.
in a good offense who can catch the ball. And I know Jalen Hurts doesn't throw at running backs that much, but still, really good offense. He can catch the ball. I still like taking Kenny Gainwell. And Miles Sanders' ADP is really sinking like a stone on this. I know you've been high on Miles. What do you think about
Mhm.
Eagles' backfield now?
Yeah, and I'm going to move him down just to get him a little bit closer to his ADP because I mean at the end of the day, like really the top 150 is almost like a value chart, and you don't want to have guys too much ahead of ADP unless you're really like I'm fine being super high on James Cook
Mm-hmm.
because he's still like very much like eighth, ninth, 10th round. But you don't want to be too high on guys that are like, in the 5th to 8th round range. So I'm going to move Miles Sanders down and I'm going to move Kenny Gainwell up. And I've been drafting Kenny Gainwell. I mean, he's one of my favorite late round picks. But I want to be I want to make sure that I'm ahead of ADP on him because not only is he good in the passing, I mean, he's not a small guy and he's really explosive. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that he could absolutely be the lead back for the Eagles in certain situations. And certainly if they want to throw the ball more, which I know we've talked about, or at least I've talked about how I think that they need to continue to be a very run heavy offense, just because that is how they maximize their personnel with their badass offensive line, their dual threat quarterback, and, all these aspects of a great, run heavy team. But they also could throw more. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we can't discount that possibility. And if they do, that's going to suit Kenneth Gainwell for sure.
Yeah. It seems like Kenny Gainwell will at a minimum play pass downs, hurry up stuff, 2-minute and stuff like that. So yeah. This Buffalo thing on Zach Moss, I thought was interesting because I had been under the assumption for a lot of the offseason that it was going to be a 2-man backfield. There's been a lot of rhetoric out of Buffalo that Zach Moss is going to be part of this backfield, which would make it a 3-man backfield with Singletary, James Cook, and then Zach Moss mixing in. Also, we have given Zach Moss a bump in the back end on his projected carry share. Does this concern you at all on the Singletary stuff and maybe even on the James Cook stuff?
Well, a lot of times teams will open the season. This happens, I think, a little bit more at receiver. Like they'll open the season playing like a legit like 4 or 5 receiver committee. And as the season progresses, whether it be due to injury or performance, the situations will narrow. And all of a sudden they'll only be playing 3 receivers, and they'll go from playing 3 backs early in the season. They'll cut one guy out. And I mean, Zach Moss just hasn't shown us anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I would bet, even if he is, like, let's say he gets 6 touches in week 1, he eventually gets cut out of the rotation and they wind up going with James Cook and Devin Singletary. I mean, that would be the extent of my expectation for the Bills backfield as it pertains to Zach Moss.
Yeah, and the reason that I thought he was like out is because he was a healthy scratch down the stretch last year a bunch, and then they draft James Cook. It's like, well, they don't care about Zach Moss anymore. But some of the reports have been a little bit scary. I think more for Devin Singletary than James Cook. Because, I mean, obviously the base down work is where Zach Moss would work in, not on pass downs. The McKenzie Crowder battle continues to rage. Crowder was hurt. McKenzie pulled way ahead, and now McKenzie mispracticed a couple of times, and Crowder's allegedly been playing well. I'm a little worried these guys are going to cancel each other out, because I think if it was all McKenzie's job or all Crowder's job, I'd be pretty excited about it. But now I'm starting to think they might cancel each other out a little bit, and that would obviously not be great. Have you been taking any McKenzie or Crowder late, and what do you think about that?
A little bit of Crowder, because Crowder goes like really late. People in every draft, there's someone who gets a little aggressive on Isaiah McKenzie.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think of the situation right now. I'm not super bullish on either guy, I think. But I'm certainly willing to draft Jamison Crowder, especially as like a wide receiver 8, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8 in best ball builds. You got to check out this video. I think it was posted on the Bills Twitter of Case Keenum going around and like asking for autographs from all of his teammates. It's pretty funny. He's like, playing a prank on him, like,
That's
Isaiah
amazing.
McKenzie, I've loved you since college. I loved you since college. And he goes up, and then Isaiah's like, Case? It's like it's pretty funny. It's kind of corny, but it's pretty funny.
The reason that I've been higher on McKenzie was just like when Beasley was out last year. I mean, McKenzie played really well, and he was earning targets at a really high rate. But if they're gonna mix these guys together, it's not going to be great. But like Evan said, people are way more excited about McKenzie. We'll see if that changes if we get some positive Crowder reports.
They do play a lot of 4 receiver sets, So I mean, these guys could both end up seeing the field a decent amount with Gabriel Davis outside and Stephon Diggs outside, and then those 2 guys as the slots.
Let's go to the Rams. We got some quotes from Sean McVay, and it sounded kind of like coach speak, but I'm still curious about your take on it. And he was like, well, we have 2 starting backs. We think that Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson complement each other really well. After what we saw from Cam Akers in the playoffs last year, I'm kind of inclined to believe that. However, no one held the guns to their head and said they had to play Cam Akers last year for all the snaps in the playoffs off of an Achilles injury, and they did so. Sean McVay also has a long history of using one back when he can. What do you think about Akers versus D. Hendo now?
Yeah, this is a developing situation, I think. I mean, I think that they like Darrell Henderson, but they know that he just straight up he's not a bell cow. I mean, he gets hurt every single time. He'll have a nice little run, but then he'll get hurt after, a game or 2, and, they'll have to move somebody else in. I mean, they can't rely on his durability for that role. But I think that if they put him into a change of pace role, and he's better in the receiving game than his Cam Akers, I think, then, I mean, I would expect him to play a certain amount. I think that Cam Akers ultimately is going to be the lead back, and I haven't made any changes in my rankings. I've actually been very high on Darrell Henderson the whole time, thinking that, what's the chances that, this backfires with Cam Akers coming off the Achilles? He wasn't effective late last season. What if Darrell Henderson goes into camp and is just like the better back? I thought that there was a possibility of that. I think I have Darrell Henderson in the top 100, actually. But it's an offense to invest in. So I would not, I would say that I think they're both fine picks.
I think Akers is way more fragile than people realize. Fragile to sucking, fragile to Stafford injuries, fragile to Henderson stealing work, and so
setback. I mean, Achilles
setback,
is not fun, man.
So I
Achilles
haven't been taking any Akers. I agree with Evan that at ADP, I mean, I'd much rather take Darrell Henderson than Cam Akers. There's no doubt about that for me. There's some Eno Benjamin hype coming, and again, it seems like every year. But there is a role here because I'm not sure how much they want to use James Conner in the pass game, and so I don't really want to draft a ton of Eno Benjamin, maybe like a last round pick or something, and hope he gets the Chase Edmonds 2020 role. I'm more concerned for James Conner losing pass down work. Any thoughts on that stuff coming out of Arizona?
Yeah, I keep thinking that they're going to use Rondale Moore as their number 2 back, but that's a very personal bias thing. I know they should because I've always likened him to Austin Eckler. It reminds me a lot of Austin Eckler and not a wide receiver. There was like this puff piece that came out in the Arizona Republic today about Rondale Moore, and like I read it, and there was not a single takeaway, not a single productive takeaway in the entire article about one guy. It's just a bunch of fluff.
Yep.
So Eno Benjamin has been in the league. I mean, he's been around. He's been in the organization, and he could not earn touches. Are we really going to think that all of a sudden something is changing for Eno Benjamin? I mean, color me skeptical. I think when push comes to shove, James Conner's really good. His metrics last year, his advanced metrics were freaking awesome. Go read the Cardinals team preview. That'll get you pumped to draft James Conner.
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about James Conner later this week on the pod. We're doing our round 3 personal rankings, pick by pick, and we'll be talking about James Conner in there. I do have James Conner as a round 3 pick. Couple more small things here. The Rhamondre Stevenson stuff, a lot of it, I was hoping that he would lock into the pass down role. He's worked a ton there. Everybody says he looks so much better there, but now we get all the Ty Montgomery stuff. And this makes me sick because Ty Montgomery's been in the league for so long and not been productive in a very, very long time. But now the Patriots beats are saying, oh, we think that Ty Montgomery could be the new James White, and James White is going to start the year on PUP almost certainly. And so I don't know, man. Like when Rhamondre was going 120, 130, I was just auto picking him. He goes in like the 90s now, and it's tougher for me to get on Rhamondre there, even though I want to. What do you think about how valid do you think this Ty Mont stuff is, and where you at with Rhamondre now?
Bro, I don't know, man. I mean, I'm trying to piece through it like everybody else is, like it's hard for me to believe Ty Montgomery, but Cordero Patterson, it was very hard for me to believe that Cordero Patterson could be like the lead dog in a backfield last year. And that freaking happened like the entire season, I don't know. We're going to have to see how it plays out. I know it's, the good news is that everybody's pretty much cheap in the backfield. So you're not really investing a whole lot into, even if you really like Rhamondre Stevenson and you take him, I'm in the Apex Expert League right now. He went 9.06. Rotopat took him at 9.06. That's fine, and I think it's fine for Damian Harris. Again, in my rankings, I have him literally back to back. Rhamondre, I think, is RB31. Damian Harris, RB32. Coin flip.
And I think, I've been taking Damian Harris. I thought he was a pretty good fade, but as his ADP was slipping into like the hundreds, I was taking him some.
Hey, this dude scored 15 touchdowns last year.
Yeah. We do have a bet in props on Damian Harris under, I believe it's 11.5 rushing touchdowns. So we'll be rooting for that.
That's a great bet. Yeah.
Last one is this Isiah Pacheco stuff, man. I mean, this reminds me so much of the Darwin Thompson. I know other people have talked about this on Twitter. It's like really athletic dude, goes to the Chiefs, star of camp. Will he turn out to be anything? People are so excited about Isiah Pacheco right now. I'm still pretty skeptical, but he does have a really good athletic profile, and he's attached to Patrick Mahomes. How interested are you, not just in redraft, but maybe in Dynasty too, on the Pacheco stuff?
Yeah. I mean, this is another kind of tough one. It's, it's a situation where, as you mentioned, Darwin Thompson, like where we could look back and be like, who the hell was Isiah Pacheco after he ends up like on 3 practice squads over the course of the 2022 season? Like that's very much in play for Isiah Pacheco, who great athlete. I think got benched for a time at Rutgers, 7th round draft pick. My more interesting takeaway from the recent Chiefs reports that Ronald Jones has like sort of comfortably been the number 2 back. Whereas you read other things about Jerick McKinnon, potentially pushing Ronald Jones off the roster. Like the Chiefs are going to need like a quality runner in their backfield, like to salt away games. I mean, they're a really good team, and there are just obvious running situations where you want to have the best runner on the field. I mean, to me, that's Ronald Jones. So to me, like I think that Ronald Jones is going to make the team despite all these reports to the contrary. And then Pacheco and these other guys are, they're fighting for scraps really behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Ronald Jones, and potentially Jerick McKinnon as the number 3.
Yeah, and I think they can't all make the team, right? I think they're going to keep 4 backs, but there's 5 with Derek Gore on the roster now too. Yeah. I do think McKinnon has a really good chance of making the team just as like a carved out role. He's their best pass catcher. He has a carved out role. And if you think Ronald Jones is going to make the team and Pacheco's going to make the team, that leaves off Gore. And so, it's going to be interesting for sure in KC. Maybe they're in play for Kareem Hunt if that goes down. So we'll see on that stuff. All right. We will have a lot more news next week because every single team is playing a preseason game starting Thursday. If you haven't checked out our preseason DFS package yet, be sure to check that out. We are projecting and doing shows for every slate. For Evan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.